Welcome to another edition of Great Health, Abundant Happiness, and Outrageous Love. Mwah. We're going to read another excerpt from the book.
Excellent.
Okay? It's all about perception being your reality. By choosing your attitude toward the world, you are creating your reality. Your perception is your reality. We say this all the time, don't we?
We do, always.
This is a fact. It's as easy as flipping the light switch as you enter the house. It's also just as easy not to flip the switch. It's just a choice. It is really interesting that most people understand this and would agree it is as easy as flipping a switch. But here's the question then. If it's that easy, why don't most people just do it? It has much to do with our egos. The ego is so powerful, it really doesn't want to give up here easily. The ego would rather say, life is hard, and it's why I don't have this or that. It seems convenient to find a reason or an excuse for our shortfalls and to place blame elsewhere. This use of energy is so wasteful. It consumes so much more time and energy to fabricate the facade and define it as real. The truth is, if we take credit for all those choices we make, only then can we grow. For every minute you maintain a low vibrational state of fear, jealousy, or anger, you are missing the opportunity to be at a higher state of vibrational energy like love, peace, and joy, where we can truly feel the closest to nirvana.
Right. So, I mean, it's so simple as you're reading it to me. Why wouldn't we choose, or why do we make excuses? Why do we blame other people or other things? You know, again, I know it's the ego, but that vibrational level is low. So we already know that, you know, if we put ourselves into a state where we're blaming somebody, we're bringing down the vibrational level.
Right.
On the flip side, if we take responsibility for our choices and do what's needed to get done instead of what the ego wants us to do, you know, we can raise our vibrational energy and live in such a, you know, a beautiful state of joy and love, which is what we're trying to achieve. And we're actually lying to the ego by making an excuse, because we're saying, I'm going to make an excuse because my ego wants to be happy and it didn't achieve that, so I better tell my ego that why that didn't happen. I mean, it's kind of
it's actually your ego that's making an excuse.
Exactly, but it's almost like this, like, circle of, you know, badness and bad energy where it's the ego, but you're making the excuse for your ego. But your ego, you're making the excuse for your ego, but what your ego really wants is to achieve. So now you have to make an excuse for what? To feed the ego for why you didn't achieve.
Yeah, it gets confusing because the ego is ourself, obviously, right? You have the ego and you have your higher self. Yeah. But your ego is where all of the low vibrational energies lie. I mean, that's your pride and your anger, your fear, all that stuff is down in the ego. It certainly is not up in the higher self.
Right.
But it's just, it's
so
interesting.
It is.
Yes, this is a choice. Once you're able to understand this very simple fact, yet it can be difficult as the ego puts up a good fight, you can continue to get there more readily and more easily as you understand the ego is your smaller self. Simply your own pride and self-importance is what we just said, right? In quantum physics, there's a concept around parallel universes or parallel realities, if you prefer. Lost my place here. These are basically all the life options available to you and every frequency. Your lowest vibrational self all the way up to your greatest possible vibrational state of enlightenment and everything in between. And note that all of these options are available, so isn't it interesting, you know you chose the worst self sometimes. I mean, that's interesting, right?
It is.
Why would we do this when our best self is also available?
Right.
Yes, we are only human, but what that means is we are born with the gift of free will and the ability to think and make decisions. We are also born as a ball of perfection and goodness. We are born with only good, so why are we choosing ungodly over godly? We make decisions constantly throughout the day, creating the moment, therefore creating our personal life, which creates the world as we know it.
Right. I just want to interject there because I think we've all done this. You know, sometimes certain things come in and take over, like jealousy. You know, sometimes we make decisions and choices based on jealousy, and it's, you know, godly or ungodly. It's so ungodly, and I think 100% of the time that we do that, you know, we know in our hearts that we're not making the right choice for the right reasons. Right?
Well, if you step back, you step away from it. This is
exactly, not in the moment.
Yeah, no,
for
what
sure.
I always say is, you know, this is the challenge, right? You've heard us say this in other videos. You know, to really get down this path of enlightenment, you have to step back and watch the ego taking over. And like you said, diving on some jealousy issue.
Right.
That's the ego.
Right.
Again, the ego is very strong, wants to keep trying to take over. I just got a few more words here that we can kind of get out of this. These decisions can be slight, but still cause change. It can be anything from going to the sink and filling a glass of water and drinking it, or quitting your job and moving to another country. Every decision, large and small, will change your course in life and have an effect on the universe as a whole. The past is the past and cannot be changed as far as we know here. That is another book. But the present, thoughts and actions at this very second are the ones that count, and we are the captain of our own ship. We are constantly following a map of our life's path and making course corrections consciously and subconsciously at every moment in time. All those minute course corrections or maintenance moves all add up to our current life and where we are, the now.
Right.
So that's the chunk we wanted to go about. And I think because we're on the relationship track, you want to kind of tie that in too with, you know, our relationship chat here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it ties into all aspects of life, right? You know, your perception is your reality, but bringing it to a relationship, you know, my perception of our, you know, of our relationship, because that's the only romantic one that I can talk about, that I have. So that's why it's the only one I can talk about. You know, my perception of it is that we have something so magical and so special. And, you know, we've done a lot on twin flames, and there is such a drive in our relationship to do something together to make a difference, a big difference in the world. Not you and I to make the difference, but to provide something, to be of service to the universe so that we can share, you know, this possibility of love, etc., and that you can perceive it however you want, right? So it's just, it's all tied together to all aspects.
Well, let me give you the flip side of that. So yeah, we know our perception about our relationship.
I know what you're going to talk about. Yeah.
But yeah, we had a friend who got married, and they had this perfect, it looked like the perfect relationship. We all thought, all the friends thought it was perfect. And then she comes back and says, hey, we're getting a divorce. And this was after a very short period of time. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, you know, I knew you were going to ask and be shocked about this, as my family is. So I kept a list throughout the, I don't know, was it 2 months or 3 months of the marriage? Kept a list of all the things that I didn't like about him, all the things that he did that annoyed me, all the bad things, because you guys all think he's so great. And I immediately said to myself, well, we can fix this really quick if we can just turn this around, because she's focused on all the wrong things. Is it too late? Yeah, it was too late. We'll make a long story short. We can talk about that later, but it was too late. But the point is, her perception of that relationship was this list of negatives. It could have easily been the other side. Had I talked to them before, I would have said, look, why don't you create a list of all the things you love about this person and focus on that. That would be your perception of the relationship, and therefore that would be your reality.
Exactly.
It's a wild concept.
Well, she chose. I mean, she literally chose to focus on these negatives. And the tragedy of that particular relationship is, it was at least a second marriage for both of them. And you and I got to spend some time with them beforehand, and they were very good together. It was different, and it was a very good union, and there seemed to be so much possibility and very open communication and very loving. All the elements seemed to be there, and I know that after they got married, they had a great honeymoon, and I think it must have been the day they got back where things started going south, when you get into the daily activities of life.
Right.
And all of a sudden, what happens during that is you can forget why you fell in love with this person, the original perception of the relationship. You can forget that person is the person you chose, and you couldn't wait to marry them. And now all of a sudden she's focusing on, I don't know what the issues were, but the negatives.
Right.
Maybe he didn't put the cap on the toothpaste every day, or
Yeah.
who knows what it is. But her perception was one thing, and it was beautiful, and then it became something else, and it was not beautiful. And it's just as easy to maintain the original perception as long as both people are whole and full of self-love. I always go back to that because it's a qualifier.
Well, yeah, because it's a decision, because it is easy. It's like flipping a switch, like it says in the book. It's just like flipping a switch. Now, the challenge is, and why don't most people do this?
Right.
I mean, if we really dig in, most people don't want to focus on the good. I mean, that's the sad thing about it, because, again, had this discussion with so many people. When we have this talk, it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right, that's the way it works.
Right.
But they go right back to the sky is falling.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's in some people's core to think about things on the negative side. Think about those low vibrational energies that we were just talking about, and focusing on that rather than focusing on the good. So you really have to train yourself. You have to train yourself to look for the good. Be a good finder. I think it was a book I read when I was a kid. Be a good finder. That means everywhere you go, find the good in everything that you see. Mm-hmm. If you're a good finder constantly, you train yourself to perceive things in a whole different light, in a positive light.
Right.
Rather than looking for the bad, and by training yourself to look for the bad and building this reality around you of negativity.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
It is that simple. I think the key thing is that you have to acknowledge your perception, and if your perception is that of positivity or of negativity, and if it's of negativity and you can acknowledge it, if your ego will allow you to, because that's the key, then I think it's something that you can change if you want to change. Some people thrive in hanging down in the negative energy, and they thrive not in a growth way, but they thrive in that's
where they live.
That's where they live, because that's where they're comfortable, and they self-sabotage. And we'll do a video on self-sabotage this week as well, or actually it's Thursday already, so in the next couple of days. But they self-sabotage because when things start getting great, all of a sudden they're not comfortable, because they're so used to it not being great. They're so used to not having that great relationship. And it is a very interesting phenomenon that occurs. And so I think it does tie heavily into self-love and sabotaging in order to, prove to yourself that you're not worthy sometimes, right?
Right. Yeah. I guess so, but it's all a choice. Like going back to this point here, your perception is your reality. And you guys know this, right? You have the ability to focus on the good or focus on the bad in every scenario. And as you do that throughout the day, that creates your reality, that creates your world. So you have complete control over your own world, your own life path, which is pretty amazing.
It is amazing. It is.
I think that's it for this evening.
Excellent. Well, thanks for reading to us, Jeffrey.
All right.
Loved it. Wishing you great health, abundant happiness, and outrageous love from the nest of Copper Mountain.
Thanks, guys.